In the early 1960s, the Syrian military turned geography into a weapon. They occupied the Golan Heights, a 3,000-foot vertical escarpment that allowed their artillery to sit comfortably in the sky while raining fire onto the Israeli farms and schools visible in the valley below. While the artillery fire caused immediate terror, the Syrian government was also preparing the Headwaters Diversion Plan. This was an engineering-scale assault designed to reroute the Jordan River and cut off the primary source of the young nation's water supply. Diverting these headwaters would systematically drain the Sea of Galilee, Israel's essential freshwater reservoir. Success for the Syrian engineers meant the Israeli state would cease to be viable without a single shot ever being fired. To stop the project, Israel needed to strike the bunkers, but the Mossad was operating in total darkness. They had no assets in Damascus and no way to map the hidden defenses.
Syrian counterintelligence was notoriously efficient, making any attempt at conventional infiltration a suicide mission. Neutralizing this high-altitude fortress required a deep cover asset capable of bypassing the physical defenses entirely to dismantle the network from within. They found their candidate, Eli Cohen, an Egyptian-born Jew working as an insurance clerk in Bat Yam. He was married, unremarkable, and had been previously rejected by Mossad because his psychological evaluation described him as overly confident. Intelligence recruiters eventually reconsidered. They realized that the same arrogance that made him a poor team player in an office made him a resilient candidate for a deep cover mission. He possessed the ego necessary to sustain a massive, solitary lie under extreme pressure. For 6 grueling months, Mossad began overwriting his identity. They trained him in advanced cryptography and radio operation, while forcing him to master a precise Syrian Arabic dialect to survive military checkpoints in Damascus. This transformation required his domestic habits to be systematically replaced by the reflexes of an operative. By deployment, the humble clerk was completely buried beneath the meticulous details of his new persona. He emerged as Kamel Amin Thaabet, a wealthy, passionately anti-Zionist textile magnate. The legend claimed he was a Syrian-born expatriate who had built a fortune in South America and now longed to see his motherland achieve military dominance. While most spies tried to disappear, Kamel did the opposite. In 1961, he moved through the highest social circles of Buenos Aires. He used Mossad funds to throw extravagant parties, establishing himself as a highly visible Syrian patriot. He used this visibility to target Major General Amin al-Hafiz, the Syrian military attaché. Kamel essentially bankrolled the general's lifestyle and political ambitions, exploiting the radical Ba'athist's constant need for funding to secure a place in his inner circle. By weaponizing his perceived wealth and radical nationalism, Kamel gained an invitation from the general himself to move to Damascus. He bypassed the physical security of the Syrian border by transforming into the regime's most trusted benefactor. Once in Damascus, Kamel rented an apartment in the most exclusive diplomatic quarter. He chose a building located directly across the street from the Syrian Armed Forces General Staff Headquarters, allowing him to monitor the movements of the military high command from his balcony. He turned his home into an unofficial club for the military elite. He used a steady supply of imported alcohol to loosen the tongues of paranoid, high-ranking generals. As they drank his whiskey, these men casually leaked classified troop movements and weapon shipments to the man they considered their safest friend. During a VIP tour of the front lines, Kamel identified a critical tactical problem. The Syrian bunkers were deeply buried and perfectly camouflaged, invisible to aerial reconnaissance. Israel couldn't hit what they couldn't see. Feigning empathy for the heat-exhausted soldiers, Kamel convinced the commander to plant eucalyptus trees at every bunker for shade. He even offered to pay for them himself. The effectiveness of this tactic relied on the commander's own gratitude. By accepting the gift, the Syrian military unknowingly provided the Israeli Air Force with a permanent, living map of their entire underground defense network. A 1963 coup in Damascus elevated Kamal's friend, Amin al-Hafiz, to the presidency. Kamel was no longer just a socialite. He was now a confidant to the most powerful man in the country.
even being considered for the position of Deputy Minister of Defense. Mossad realized they had reached the highest levels of the Syrian government and began demanding more information. They ordered Kamel to transmit daily. This constant breach of radio silence became a fatal vulnerability, giving Syrian intelligence more opportunities to detect a signal. Colonel Ahmed Soudani, head of Syrian intelligence, knew there was a mole. He utilized imported Soviet radio direction finding technology to hunt the rogue broadcasts. To find the spy, Soudani ordered a complete power blackout of the diplomatic quarter. When the city went dark, Eli Cohen continued his transmission using battering power. In the sudden electronic silence, his signal was the only frequency active, leading the strike team directly to his door. The capture of a high-level spy triggered a massive international response. Pope Paul VI and various heads of state pleaded for clemency. The humiliated Ba'ath Party realized that to save face, the Israeli spy had to be executed. This outcome highlights the inherent risk of deep cover work. The device that allowed Eli to save his country also signaled his exact location to the enemy. Eli Cohen was ultimately executed in 1965, but the strategic payoff of his work arrived 2 years later, during the outbreak of the 1967 Six-Day War. As the conflict began, the Israeli Air Force targeted the Golan Heights without needing radar to find bunkers. They simply looked for the flourishing lines of eucalyptus trees that Eli had planted years before and used them as exact crosshairs for their munitions. The bunkers were decimated in hours. Without their fortified cover, the Syrian defenses on the heights were quickly overrun, allowing Israeli ground forces to capture the once impenetrable terrain. Despite decades of requests from his family and international pressure, the Syrian government has refused to return Eli Cohen's remains. Nadia Cohen has spent over 50 years pleading for the right to bury her husband in Israeli soil. Eli Cohen secured the terrain to save his country from annihilation, yet decades later, he remains a prisoner of the very soil he captured.